Your brand may be staying on top of current trends, but are you agile enough to stay relevant, resilient, and successful as customers, competition, and the world continues to change at a breakneck pace? I'm thrilled to share the newly revised version of my first book, The Agile Brand. I'm calling it The Agile Brand Revisited. It's been updated to reflect our continually changing world, and it provides 7 principles that form the backbone of an agile brand, offering detailed insights and actionable steps for incorporating them into your business strategy. This is the book that started it all, and I'm excited to share it with you. It's now available in print and digital formats and available everywhere. Learn more by going to the Agile Brand Guide website at www.agilebrandguide.com. Welcome to Season 4 of The Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom, where we discuss business agility through customer experience, employee experience, and digital transformation. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed on this show, you can go to my website at gregkihlstrom.com and read my latest articles or get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, now available on Amazon and other retailers. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to a new sponsor of the show, Basecamp. Throughout my career, whether it was at my own agency or now as a consultant, Basecamp is what I've always relied on to help keep projects on track, on schedule, and on budget. It takes a straightforward approach to project management, it streamlines workflow management, and definitely keeps the team in the loop and on top of ongoing updates, which are all major components in a smooth-running operation. No matter if it's a simple campaign or a multi-million-dollar project, Basecamp has been a key ingredient in the recipe for a successful project and business. Go to basecamp.com/agile and sign up today to start a free 30-day trial. There's no credit card required, and you can cancel online at any time. If you want to know if Basecamp is right for your team, signing up for that free trial is the best way to do so. Remember to go to basecamp.com/agile, that's basecamp.com/AGILE to get your free trial. Thank you, Basecamp, for sponsoring this episode. Now, let's meet our guest. My name is Greg Kihlstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile Brand podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the current state of B2B e-commerce and what lies ahead for brands. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Rupesh Agrawal, CEO of Amla Commerce, makers of Znode, an enterprise B2B e-commerce platform, and Artifi, an e-commerce product customization platform. Rupesh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for having me today, and I'm really excited to be part of this.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about this with you. Before we get started, though, why don't you give a little background on yourself as well as what led to your role at Amla Commerce?
Sure. So my name is Rupesh Agrawal. I like to call myself as a B2B e-commerce evangelist. I've been doing this for 20 plus years. In the past, I started a digital agency that mainly focused on B2B commerce and helped customers develop strategies as well as, the whole technology implementation and ongoing maintenance and so on. So we were an end-to-end digital agency, and I grew it to 600 employees. And what I realized was I could do better on the product side. So exited that business 5 years ago. Was very successful, and now I'm fulfilling my dream of doing B2B e-commerce product, and that's how I've landed at Amla Commerce and Znode.
Wonderful. Well, yeah. So we're here to talk about just that. So B2B e-commerce and really what brands need to understand not only about its current state as well as what they need to plan for in the near future. So from that standpoint and from your perspective, running e-commerce platforms, what are some of the challenges that brands face with the more traditional set of B2B e-commerce tools?
A great question, Greg. There's so many answers to this, but the main few that I would say based on my experience are really around flexibility. The commerce world continues to evolve and change and grow rapidly. I like to call e-commerce as commerce because a much higher percentage of business, even in the B2B world, is going through online now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to support those rapid changes and rapid adoption, it's critical that these platforms offer flexibility and several business models, right? They can be just a standard, here are several standard B2B features, because those are outdated, right? And a lot of these platforms that are out there, they were written a decade ago, some even 15 years ago, and then they got acquired and so on, and no innovation has happened, and that's the biggest lack in the marketplace, that some of the organizations that want strong B2B e-commerce tool sets get stuck, are stuck with the old technologies that are not flexible enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And so because of these technical challenges, what are brands missing out on? What could they be achieving if not for some of the lack of flexibility?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is reaction, right? So for example, when COVID, hit, right? It is, brands need technology stack that is allowing them to react fast to the customer needs, right? I give a Chase example all the time. Now nobody goes to banks and the tellers and so on, and drive-throughs, right? You do everything on the phone. It's one-stop shop. Brands need to sort of be able to take their e-commerce technologies and make that same exact thing for their customers, right? To develop that loyalty and so on. So yeah, the biggest thing is that they're missing out on reacting fast enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And so your product, Znode, offers some interesting things to B2B e-commerce. So, how does it differ from some of the more traditional platforms that have some of those challenges we just discussed?
Yeah. So again, when I joined Amla Commerce and started Znode, we rewrote the entire platform in 2017, 18, and continue to evolve it, right? And it's the next generation platform that provides extraordinary flexibility, and it's more of an Amazon model, API first, but at the same time, we provide all the tool sets and the accelerators ready to go out of the box for our customers and brands to be able to launch things, react faster, and more of a configure and launch, right? If it becomes an IT project to do that takes 2 years, nobody's interested. So the platform, my vision was always with Znode is a platform that is low code, high configuration, and here you go, Mr. Customer, you can go turn things on and off right through the console, and that's what we are offering.
Great. So we've been talking a bit about, or we've been focused on the direct customer of the e-commerce platform, but what about the end customers of that are buying through these e-commerce platforms? How does a more flexible approach help those customers have a better experience when they're purchasing?
And that's a very, very important point. Customers build all these experiences, and brands build all these experiences, but the brands that are successful, the organizations that are extremely successful, are the ones that keep their customers in the entire journey at all times, right? They keep them in mind. So if these organizations develop customer experience based on customer needs versus their opinions, then they're successful, right?
Yeah.
And a platform like Znode allows them to curate and create those experiences exactly to what their customers might need. And different industries, require different experiences. Somebody ordering large millions and millions of dollars of orders every month might require easy bulk ordering capability. Somebody who's ordering, small quantities but very high dollars, and the payment terms are, optional and so on. They require different experiences. So the customer personas are key while developing these, and that's where you can create better customer experiences and create those loyalties.
Yeah, that's great. So let's keep talking about flexibility and maybe moving back to your direct customers, the B2B e-commerce brands. It's flexibility is definitely key to those that are dealing with multiple suppliers, multiple audiences, multiple systems that need to integrate. So one of the things you recently released was dynamic schemas for your platform. And so some of the more technical listeners may immediately see the value of what that could provide, but could you explain a little to the marketers and maybe some of the non-technical listeners what exactly dynamic schemas means and the value that it provides?
Yeah, so dynamic schemas, have sort of been around for a decade or so on the product information side, right? Because every product is unique and could have its own schema of definition of that product, right? So an iPhone could have, iPhone size, an iPhone, model, and so on. Versus AirPods, they have different ways of defining themselves. We call them the product attributes or product fields, in the product merchandising world, right? So far, the platforms have done that well with PIMS now. They've evolved to that. But our platform, you can do that dynamic schema around all entities. And again, these are some of the technical jargons, but hopefully it makes sense. So, as in order to be flexible, it's critical that we allow flexibility around data models for other entities as well. And that allows us to be always true on the headless aspect, as well as allow customers to easily take updates and consume updates as we release new features, because they've not had to modify the database structures for some of these other entities that don't offer dynamic schemas, right?
Yep.
So one of the things we did was, in order to support this ease of updates and consuming of updates and allowing customers to still have flexibility, we released this, and it's one of the most strongest features I would say for brands to be able to consume.
Yeah. Can you give an example of how a customer was able to use dynamic schemas? I know you talked about it sort of in the abstract, but could you give an example of how a customer used it where more traditional solutions may not support?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I used to be in an agency world and did a lot of these implementations in the past. As soon as the customers go through this journey of new e-commerce platform and their agency partner or their internal teams are doing the discoveries, one of the definitions they have to do is, hey, how is our customer data stored in ERP? And they try to match it, or map it to the e-commerce platform's customer record. And immediately they realize, hey, our ERP has these 7 more fields, but the e-commerce platform does not offer these fields. So where are we going to store this data? So what they end up doing is they go to the core database, add these 7 fields manually, override the data structure, and now they've completely shut themselves off of the easy upgrade.
Yeah.
And what happens is, Greg, but at the time they need to get the project done. So there's no other option, right? So they end up doing that. Whereas in Znode, you could go into the Znode admin and say, I want these 7 more fields that are available in ERP right in Znode, and we allow you to do that right from the admin without touching the database.
Got it. That's great. So let's talk a little bit about what you see coming down the pike, the future of B2B e-commerce. What do you see as some of the biggest opportunities on the horizon that B2B e-commerce brands should be keeping in mind?
So the big thing, right? The biggest opportunity I would see is really understanding the customer buying patterns, how they buy, and giving them those tool sets, right? One of a good example for me is, we have a customer on Znode and they cater to HVAC contractors, right? And these contractors, they don't have big platforms and ERP systems and whatnot. They're small 5-people companies, right? So they love our customers' e-commerce portal because they use that as their ERP. They because as they place orders, every order online and go pick them up, now they've built a history for all the jobs that they did in the last several years. They can look up warranty right there. So that's just an example, right?
Yeah.
And what our customer has been able to do is create that stickiness with these contractors, because now these contractors are using these tool sets not just to place an order, but also to manage sort of their own customer base, manage their own, thing. So just, and this is just an example. So to me, every B2B business, and brand has opportunities like this. They just need to find them and then build their tool sets around that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it seems like flexibility is kind of the theme of our conversation today. But I mean, it seems like that really. Do you think that really is the future? I mean, it seems like there's a move away from. There's always going to be large platforms and kind of the monolithic platforms, so to speak. But does flexibility and composability and these seem to be things that keep coming up more and more, and at least in my conversations. I mean, do you think that really is the trend?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, Greg, I look at all these things as jargons, right?
Yeah.
And every company is now claiming that they have all these things. I think what customers need to be able to do is take their use cases and say, hey, can I do this or not? Period. There is no other explanation, right? So you're absolutely right. Flexibility and be able to react faster is the platform you want to be in.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Well, and I would also say you're talking about being adaptive as a platform and as a company yourselves to the customer experience, right? I mean, you mentioned the HVAC contractors. So, how are you listening to customers and adapting and responding to them and their needs, and how does that influence your product roadmap?
Yeah, it's amazing, Greg, how much I have learned with just my digital agency business and with Znode now. Every week we meet a new type of prospect and learn about their business model. And it's amazing to see how these billion-dollar companies, do these unique sales of products and how they're in business and how they've grown to that, right? Yeah. And I love that part of my job because I learned so much. And with that, Greg, I also learn as much as I can as to how their customers are interacting with them. And believe it or not, in the B2B world, it's unique around, Everyone says, I want a site like Amazon. Well, that's not what you need, right. In the B2B world. You need what your customers want and how they interact with you to do business with you. So to me, we try to be close to our customers and prospects. We have this concept of QBRs, quarterly business reviews with our customers. When I was running an agency, none of the products that we implemented did that. They only came for license renewals at the end of the year, right. And that's something we are very proud of, at Amla Commerce. We religiously meet with our customers quarterly, learn how they're doing, what challenges they're facing, and we try to learn their customers and try to keep our roadmap, aligned with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great that you're structuring your company around getting that type of feedback. I think that's so valuable. Well, one last question before we wrap up here. You've given a lot of great advice already, but what's one piece of advice you would have for B2B e-commerce brands that know they need to make some improvements to their e-commerce experience? Maybe not sure exactly first steps to take, but what would you recommend as they navigate the months ahead?
So that's a good question, and I always tell all our customers and the prospects I meet, don't focus on short term. Create B2B commerce strategies, platforms, implementations. Everything has to be a long-term plan. Even if you're slow, it's okay. But as long as you're delivering capabilities to your customers that are going to be beneficial for decades to come, that's what the focus should be on. A lot of publicly traded companies, they're trying to trying to get the most short-term win to please, the shareholders and management and so on.
Right.
And to me, the big winners are who are slow and steady, focused on long-term.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Rupesh, thanks so much for joining the show. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with what you're doing?
I think obviously, we have our own social channels. We like to keep our customers up to date. If they sign up for emails, they'll be up to date on our stories, and we are starting to create a lot more visibility around what we are doing. So if they want to just look out for us on different channels, we are there.
Wonderful. Yeah, and we'll have links to the websites in the show notes of this episode as well, so people can check it out. Great. Well, again, I'd like to thank Rupesh Agrawal, CEO of Amla Commerce, makers of Znode and Artifi, for joining the show. Thanks for listening to The Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom. Talk with you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.theagilebrand.show. To get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, visit my website at gregkihlstrom.com. Until next week, stay agile.